And the next thing to do actually is to turn the microphone to welcome Aswani Jain, candidate for governor, and turn the microphone over to him and ask him to present his candidature in about 5 minutes, and then open the floor to questions and discussion for another 5 minutes. After that, we can talk about any subsequent meetings we may choose to have. Thank you. Over to you. Welcome.
Great. Thank you all so much. And can you all hear me fine? Okay, perfect. Well, thank you again sincerely for taking the time and for this opportunity. So I'll just tell you a little bit about myself, and then, yeah, happy to answer any questions for the time we have. So as a starting point, my name is Aswani Jain. I use he, him pronouns. I'm a 32-year-old cancer survivor who's also a son of immigrants. I'm a product of Maryland public schools. I've been able to work in the public, private, and nonprofit sectors. And I served in the Obama White House and in 2 federal agencies. And I'm running for governor to make our politics more inclusive and accessible. Now, this idea of inclusion started back when I was 13 years old and diagnosed with a type of cancer. I remember during that time, I saw a world in which I may not get to leave the 4 walls of that hospital room. I saw kids sitting right next to me lose their battles. I felt really depressed and alone. And I found many who were making decisions for me as opposed to making them with me. And so I thought, if I was blessed enough to get a second chance at life, I was going to try to make it count. And luckily, I not only beat cancer, but I was able to go from survivor to advocate. And by getting involved in politics, I found opportunities to connect with others who had similar struggles and really channel my pain into something positive. And it's that advocacy work that has now led me to run for your governor. And while I would be the nation's youngest governor, I have both the experience and perspective needed to serve you all well. Like I mentioned, I've worked in the public, private, and nonprofit sectors. I also helped manage the political appointee process in the Obama White House, worked to get over 400,000 Marylanders access to healthcare when I was at the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. I worked on affordable housing when I was at the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development. And I helped get the NIH and the FDA billions of dollars when I was then Vice President Biden's Director of Outreach for what was called the Cancer Moonshot. And equally important, I'm a product of Maryland public schools, a son of immigrants and minority-owned small business owners, and I'm a cancer survivor who knows what it feels like to be written off or have others make decisions for me instead of with me. And that's exactly why I am not waiting until the election to be inclusive. I'm proud to say that we have already built one of the largest grassroots campaigns in the entire state of Maryland. I'm also the first statewide candidate in the US to be 100% volunteer run and limit the influence of money by making all my events free. Instead of spending time on making donor calls, I spend each and every day in a different county connecting one-on-one with voters through my mobile campaign offices. And I'm actually in your county on the 22nd of every single month. And since January, I have shared over 150 detailed policies on my website, every one of which were created by residents who will be impacted by those policies, including my fully paid for Maryland Now plan, which will eliminate the state income tax for 95% of Maryland workers, make Maryland the very first state to make public transit free, create the nation's very first guaranteed jobs program, legalize marijuana while expunging records, and impose very specific anti-corruption measures. At the end of the day, I honestly believe decisions about us should not be made without us. And so I'm truly honored for this opportunity. You can always go to janeforgovernor.com to find out more about me or hold me accountable for all the policies we're going to talk about. But with that, I would love to answer any questions.
Thank you, and thank you for keeping to your 5 minutes. Let me ask first the committee members if anyone has any questions for our candidate.
I was going to say, maybe you can talk to us, there are 2 things. Talk to us a little bit more about the Maryland tax-free plan that you have and how that would impact us. We're very sensitive here on the Eastern Shore also to hear what you have to say about some of the rural issues and how you see that impacting your being governor as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So one part of my Maryland Now plan is eliminating the personal income, state income tax for 95% of Maryland workers. Is that the part that you want me to dive in deeper, or was there something else?
No, that would be great.
Okay, great. So as a starting point, again, you can go to my website to find out the full details of how this is fully paid for and kind of more of the nuances. Number 2, this policy, along with every other policy, was made directly with a coalition of residents from the Eastern Shore, along with all other parts of the state and all different kinds of backgrounds and age groups. And then number three, the idea of doing this is if you are making less than $400,000 per year in the state of Maryland, so that's 95% of Maryland workers, almost 2.9 to 3 million workers, we're going to remove the personal state income tax. And it's going to save an average of about $2,000 per year for an average Marylander, increase your take-home pay and disposable income, and it will allow more people to afford to retire in our state and more individuals and businesses to move into our state. Now, this plan is fully paid for, and the way we're going to pay for it is in a few different ways. Number one, we're going to increase the fossil fuel fee. We're already being damaged to our climate by the fossil fuel industry, but we're not actually getting any revenues from this. So this will allow us to generate hundreds of millions of dollars in additional revenue. We're also going to legalize marijuana and make sure we're taxing it. So that will also bring in hundreds of millions in additional revenue to our state. And this is a big piece of this, we're going to increase the sales tax from 6% to 7.5%. Now, what we have found is most Marylanders are okay paying a little bit more for goods and services than to ever pay a state income tax ever again. And an average Marylander pays anywhere from $500 to $900 every year in a sales tax, but they can pay up to $2,000 for the state income tax. And so by eliminating the state income tax without raising property taxes, and then in addition to having a guaranteed jobs program, reducing some of the cost of living and some of the other 150 plus policies that talk about infrastructure, affordable housing, and you name it, we're really going to be able to generate more economic revenue in the short term and more economic sustainability for all Marylanders in the long term.
Thank you.
Of course.
Mr. Jain, thank you very much for coming and joining us tonight. I'm interested to know how you intend to make your very interesting plans and ideas available and accessible to the Eastern Shore, which is unfortunately an area of the state that does not welcome or think highly of non-people from here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you so much for that question. So there's a few different ways, right? Number one, it's making my campaign itself very accessible and inclusive. No charge for any events on the campaign. I am physically in a different county every single day of the week, consistently, including the Eastern Shore, including Dorchester County, consistently on the same days of every single month. So people can come in a very informal way to meet a governor candidate. I am also physically canvassing door to door in every single county, a minimum of 3 hours a day, including in your county. So again, doing something that governor candidates do not typically do. I've also shared really specific details to a host of policies, which typically candidates don't do. They only have maybe a couple lines, or they don't talk about how they're going to pay for all of their ideas. And those are things that I've seen, especially residents on the Eastern Shore, really resonate with. And then a final big piece of this, in addition to the specific policies, is including you all in the decision-making process. My entire campaign has no staff. We're all volunteer, crowdsourced, run. And we have residents from all parts of the state, including your county, including the Eastern Shore, making every single policy and strategy decision on my campaign. So this idea of including the Eastern Shore voices at the table typically would be done after the election. I'm doing it since day one of my campaign when I launched back in January. So those are, I think, some of the concrete, tangible ways where we are finding a lot of great success in getting a lot of volunteers, and the fact that we have more volunteers than any other candidate, and as well from the Eastern Shore, as well as all parts of Maryland, rural communities included. I think it's proof that the message and strategy is working.
Thank you.
Of course.
Thank you. Okay, we've got to move on. Is it Susan? A very quick question, very quick response, but we have to move on from 10 minutes.
I'd like to know how strong is your commitment to environmental issues. I was happy to hear about the fossil fuel thing, but as you probably know, Governor Hogan has been vetoing most of our environmental legislation, and we don't want another governor like that.
Absolutely, and I know I'm going to keep it short, so you can go to my website, jainforgovernor.com. I have an entire climate change and also a transportation infrastructure policy memo, also a tourism memo. So you can look at those details and again, hold me accountable, look at the nuances. And if anyone wants to have a one-on-one conversation with me, please reach out on my website and I'm happy to make the time to do that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you both. I was going to ask a similar question. When you're here on the 22nd, how do we find you? Where we find
Yep.
you?
So again, the schedule is on the website, jainforgovernor.com. Go to mobile offices. You'll see exactly where I'm going to be at. But again, if you connect with me beforehand, we can also find a time. But I'm in Gary Boyle Park in Cambridge from 10 to 11 every 22nd. And then Friendship Park in the East New Market area from 3 to 4 p.m.
Bring warm clothes. Thank you so much for making yourself accessible and for sharing your vision and energy with us. I very much appreciate it.
Of course. Thank you all so
Thank you.
much.
Thank you.
Thank you. You're welcome to stay, but we understand you probably have a very busy schedule tonight. Either way. Thank you.
Have a great night.
Good night. And then with that, I'm going to hand the microphone over to Tim Adams, who in running for comptroller would be quite concerned about how to pay for some of these ideas. You certainly don't have to speak to his ideas. We'd love to hear yours. Thank you.
Hey, first and foremost, thank you for having me here this evening. I really appreciate the opportunity to talk with you. A little bit about myself. I was originally raised in New Orleans. My father was a police officer. My mom was a seamstress. I come from a somewhat unsettled, financially unstable home, but like many of us do. I was fortunate enough to be taught really about community service. You know, every night there's typically a knock on the door for someone needing some help from my father or my mother. And they taught me about community because they always opened the door and were always willing to help. I was fortunate enough to go to college. I went to Xavier University in New Orleans. I did a co-op as a chemist with US Customs and realized I didn't want to be in a lab my entire career. And so I went to the University of New Orleans, got an MBA, went to the West Coast and got recruited into the aerospace, really into the defense field. And a woman by the name of Denise Eisler taught me about weapon systems and about supporting. And I decided from there, not knowing any better, that I wanted to start my own engineering firm. And so at a young age, I started Systems Application and Technology, SATEC. And I started out of the trunk of my car. And now it is one of the largest Black-owned businesses in the nation. Every day, thousands of men and women put on my SATEC badge and go out and do national defense and national security. I'm very proud of that. Operating out of about 23 different states, I have people at any time all around the world. You know, and from that, building that business from the trunk of my car to where it is now, I really went through a lot of heartache and a lot of challenges. But through all of that, I think all it really did was made me stronger and wiser. And so I've developed that executive leadership from the private sector side of what it is to build budgets, what it is to manage diverse work groups, what it is to really contribute and create jobs. From there, people came to me and the true story is one day my son called me and said, "Dad, there's a lot of people at the house and you need to come home." And I went home and there was a huge cross section of people from the community asking me to run for mayor of the city of Bowie. And I agreed to do it. And I'm so very proud of that because what that also gave me was that executive leadership on the public sector side of the house. What it is to maintain budgets, what it is to really serve the people on a day-to-day basis, what it is to maintain the AAA bond ratings and do all those things. And so I have that executive leadership both on the public side and the private side. And I think that makes me uniquely qualified truly to be our next comptroller. You see, one of the things that we need to know is that I'm running on three things, and that's accountability, justice, and change. That accountability is just making sure that we're financially stable as a state, that we really make sure that everybody pays their fair share of taxes. Right now, we have major corporations and large businesses that aren't paying their fair share, and we need to hold them accountable. And we can do that, and that's what I want to do. Many people don't realize of the 150 largest businesses we have in the state, less than a third of them pay any taxes. And we've got to change that. We can't put the financial tax burden on our everyday households and the men and women who are working and on our small businesses. So that's what I want to do from an accountability standpoint. I also believe in that justice. When I talk about that, we talk about equity and inclusion and really get to the public works, the Board of Public Works. And again, that's where I have a unique experience that none of my opponents have. You see, I've worked with contracts for over 30 years plus. I understand contracts. I understand how to advocate for them. And what I do know is that we're giving out way too many sole source contracts, way too many retroactive contracts. We are doing too many waivers where people are saying they can't find small businesses, women-owned businesses, and minority-owned businesses. We have to stop that. You see, by doing that and cutting down on all of those sole source contracts and retroactives, we really create an opportunity for the state to do better. Because number one, we know that with more competition, we get more bang for the buck. We get more pricing that's favorable. We get more innovation. We also know that we create other jobs. You know, when we don't allow our MBE programs to work efficiently in the state, that means we stop people from having an opportunity to grow and excel and create more jobs. You know, the Board of Public Works is so very important when it comes to communities like yours. You know, we need to make sure that we're doing those things from an agricultural standpoint. The Board of Public Works, you know, the Comptroller will be able to make sure that we do those things that we need to, that we'll make sure that we'll support. You know, when we do the wetlands permits, that we don't allow overgrowth and overdevelopment, that we make sure that we contribute to fight for and work with, you know, the farmers by approving investments in programs such as the Maryland Agricultural Loan Fund and the program on open spaces. We need to do that. We know that in your area, it's mostly a volunteer fire department. We need to make sure that we advocate and fight for the VCAF, to make sure that you have the funding that you need to do to keep the residents safe. So those are all things that we need to do, that we can do, and that change. And I just want to make sure that with my experience too in cybersecurity and other things, that we protect our taxpayers, that we protect you from identity theft and fraud, and for those who prey upon us. And so that tells you a little bit about me. I know it's a short thing, but I've been very blessed in my life. And I'm doing this, I've been very blessed. And I say that because I am a man of faith and I'm not ashamed of that. You know, and I'm doing this, I don't need a job. I don't need money. I don't need a position. I've been blessed with all that. I just want to serve the people. The Comptroller is where we can make that change. You know, and I know we were talking a little earlier about what can we do environmentally. That Board of Public Works is so important. Let's not be investing in those with fossil fuels and other things. Let's be investing in those that are going to help our climate. Let's invest in our own small businesses and others and get those returns. And I know I need to stop. There's so much more, and I'll take any questions at this point.
Thank you. I did want to give people a chance. Thank you very much for explaining your history and how you come to this and the passion you bring to it. Do I have any questions from the floor? Please raise your hand. You can do that by clicking on the reactions, and if you look at my box, you'll see I raised my hand. Anybody got a question? Dickie has a question, raising a finger. Go ahead, Dickie.
Thank you, Mr. Adams. Thank you very much for joining us. I'm curious, given your obviously extensive experiences, why you chose to run for Comptroller.
I chose to run for Comptroller because that's where I can help our state make the most immediate impact. You know, when we start talking about our climate and our environment, you know, when we start talking about the open spaces and what we can do there, when we start talking about how we can really help individuals and their businesses grow, how we can stop sprawl. One of the main things I ran on in the city of Bowie was stopping the overdevelopment. We need to create jobs. We need to build, but we need to do it in a smart way that we don't damage, that we try to get to zero carbon output, that we support our wind and others, and that's where we invest our money. That's how I came to this, because with the Board of Public Works as well, no one else, none of my opponents have the experience that I have when it comes to contracts. And the Board of Public Works is somewhere where you can truly impact environmentally and financially how we make sure that our state moves forward. Remember, that's what we vote on those bond bills, to make sure our schools are safe and healthy, that we work towards having air that our children and grandchildren can breathe, and water that our children and grandchildren can drink. You know, I'll say one last thing on that, and you'll understand a part of my passion. And that is, last year, my eldest daughter died. And she left me with a 1-year-old. Well, now he's 2 years old. And when I look at him, I want to make sure that he has a state, a world that he can live in, but also somewhere where he can pursue his passions, and he has an opportunity to grow and get the education he deserves. And that's what I want for every child in the state of Maryland. And it's not just about our children, our grandchildren, but even our great-grandchildren. And that's why I'm running for this, because I know we can make changes now that will affect us for generations. Mm-hmm. And again, I say it not in both saying anyway, but I am truly the most qualified candidate for Comptroller.
Thank you very much for the answer. I'm very sorry to hear about your loss.
But, you know, God has a plan.
And we're very grateful that when you're speaking to all of our hearts as Democrats, as well as we look at, I'll speak personally, with fear at where things are spinning right now, and the need this society has to step up and provide that vision that you've described for every child. I think you'll find you're in the right, you're in good company on our aspirations.
I'm glad to hear. And know that I visited there many times. I was so excited when we talk about our children, when you had the ribbon cutting for the Boys and Girls Club, and seeing those young people just play and have fun, and know that that'll change lives as well. And just going around in the county and meeting people and doing those things. And I make a promise to you that I will continue to come, and I will make sure that I am there often. Being that young man who also grew up, just to throw in, because I loved it, the 4-H, and understanding about the agricultural society and what we go through and what we need and how important it is. You know, so anyway, again, thank you. If I can answer any other questions, please feel free.
Just one quick question is, I assume you have a website. Please tell us what it is and how we keep in touch with you.
Yes, please go to timadams.org. And again, that's timadams.org. And I truly do thank you for giving me an opportunity to talk to you this evening, and for us to have those shared values and make sure that we make this world a better place.
Thank you. Have a good evening. We're going to move on in our agenda. We're very glad you came to talk to us.